Hi everyone, hi Rob, welcome back to Faithful Dummies.
Hi everyone, hi Izzie. How you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing well actually. It's to let you in on timings, it's the end of term at the moment, so winding down, and it's been quite a nice couple of weeks. How about you?
Yeah, same really. I've got a nice little chilled section now just before it gets very busy again, so I'm enjoying that.
Yeah, we do get very busy in the summer, to be fair.
We do, yeah. We've got a little kids camp at our church as well, which lasts a week, which is good fun, but very energetic, very go. Thankfully, it's just the mornings, but it's a lot.
Nice. Yeah, we haven't done kids Bible camps at church for a while, but I do kind of miss it. And then I remember the hard work that goes into it, and maybe it's okay not to have it.
Yeah. I'd say you're welcome to come and visit, but I already know that you're busy, so what
so
a shame,
busy. So busy. Anyway, I was going to say we're not going to do dummy moments today, and we're not, but I would like to say that I went to intro this podcast and totally forgot the name of it. So that's my that's my little dummy moment for this morning.
Yeah.
But we've got a guest today, so we're gonna leave the dummy moment to him. But today we are talking to another Rob, my friend. He works at Pool, and we wanted to ask him if he could tell us what's going on with all the different types of churches or denominations, what that means, how we pick one, what we do when we don't like them, all that kind of thing. So this was an interesting interview with a lot of history and teaching that I didn't know.
Yeah, there was a lot to it, wasn't it? It was quite meaty. Don't let that put you off.
Yeah, absolutely not. So shall we go ahead and listen?
Okay, yeah, over to the interview with Izzie and Rob.
Rob, welcome to the podcast. Your name is also Rob, the same as my co-host. So for clarity, well, it is a great name. You are Rob from Pool. I suggested we call you the other Rob, and you wanted to be called what?
That's irrelevant. I've never met Rob, so I can't say that I'm the better Rob, but I would agree that I am.
We'll just have Rob number 1 and Rob number 2, shall we?
Okay.
Great. So Rob number 2 or 1, how do we know each other, and what do you do in terms of youth work?
I know you because you work down the other end of the road where I work, essentially. And we have led stuff together and had the joy of knowing you for a little while. You work in a free church. I work in an Anglican church. You were like, I have no Anglican friends. Can I ask you? And I went, sure.
Absolutely. You are my introduction to the Anglican world.
Yes.
So you're a youth worker in a church, in an Anglican church. What kinds of things do you do with your young people?
Oh, loads of stuff. I don't think like the idea of your denomination matters too much of like engaging with young people. So, you know, we do stuff that's more open and accessible to everyone and run sessions from year 7 all the way to year 13. Stuff that's social all the way to last night we had a sixth form group where we had worship and Bible studies and going through the Sermon on the Mount all the way through to next week. We're going to like a massive Ringo slide place and, you know, everything else in between. So hopefully nothing too different to anyone else at one level, but it is great fun and got an amazing team that helped me do it.
Nice. I love watching Rob's church's Instagram because they're always doing amazing fun stuff and it just looks incredible.
Yeah, it's the power of editing.
Nice. So on this podcast, we're called Faith for Dummies. We like to share a dummy moment from our lives, either recent or historical. We've been part of some dummy moments for one another, but have you got one that you'd like to share?
I feel this question is so teed up in the message that Izzie sent me. It was like, there's one specific she has in mind that links very well to the rest of this podcast.
Go on.
Which is great fun. We run a project called Resound, which is gathering local churches together from all different denominations and spaces and places in partnership with Dorset Youth for Christ. And in 2023, we had the privilege of both Izzie and I interviewing the then Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, and not going down that road too much, but it was a real privilege to do so. And we got to ask him lots of different questions. But Izzie, in all of her naivety of Anglicanism, just really wanted to ask, you know, what an archbishop does, and was teeing up the question, turned and suggested that I'm the fountain of her Anglican knowledge. And the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's media trained, who answers questions, all that kind of stuff, openly face palms at the prospect that I'm somebody's Anglican knowledge, that I joked that it was a low bar. And you can feel, I'll send you the clip. Like, honestly, it is quite a bad moment in that time. And so when I'm actually applying to be a priest, and they went, oh, gee, is there any reason why you couldn't be a priest? I went, well, this happened once. That went down quite well, actually. They haven't
That
said
was
no
a great
yet,
moment.
but I actually have an extension on this as well, which
Go
you don't
on.
know about yet. So
Ooh.
I, in the last 2 months, have gone to Lambeth Palace twice, which is a palace in London where the Archbishop of Canterbury lives. First time I went, a friend of mine, Tom, was hosting an event there, and no one else was there. He was like, go round, go explore. And it's really quite cool. There's a crypt. It's on the south bank of London. He didn't specify we couldn't go upstairs. I didn't realise that's his flat. And I just literally walked into the Archbishop's flat, and I was like, hi. So I've not told you this, but that's happened to me twice now. Fortunately,
That's
he didn't remember who I was.
incredible.
So
That's
anyway, yes.
That's amazing. That's like the best dummy moment we've had. That's like a celebrity dummy moment.
Yeah, it was really awkward, by the way. And then I chatted.
Yeah.
You didn't go upstairs, did you? I was like, yeah, but you never said. Anyway, that's less than a dummy moment, but I'll send you a photo later so you can see that. It was really awkward. And then went back to this meeting.
There we go. Being Anglican has its perks.
Random one.
Well, speaking of the Archbishop and speaking of the Anglican Church, that leads us right into the topic of today.
You were teeing that up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great moment in our friendship. I think this episode is called "What About All the Different Types of Church?" Something like that. Another word for types of church is also denominations. So you'll hear people throw that word around. And I wondered if you could explain, Rob, what is a denomination? So you're involved in a different kind of church to me, and a different kind of church to Rob, the co-host Rob. But can you explain what we mean by different types of churches?
Yeah, so it's funny because most people say church, and this will come into one of my pros later, but you just look at the building at the end of your road, that's church, right? Or what we've just been subject to. The church began after the life of Jesus, and it was mainly in homes, and there was persecution, and it was in their towns and places. It looks very different to what kind of we know now, and it was often the public square as well in early starts of faith. And then in the 11th century, you have the Great Schism, and then there's the East and the West splitting. So you have the Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church, so their authority. And then in the 16th century, you have the thing called the Reformation. But leading up to that, there were still questions around the authority of the church and who has ultimate authority with that. And so, in that time, everyone would have been, I guess, what known as Catholic. And then in the 16th century, in 1517, you have Martin Luther, who puts up the 95 Articles. Is that right? Yeah. I want to say the 17th of October or the 31st of October, one of the 2 dates.
I think it was the 31st.
1517. I think that's it. Anyway, it's around then. Someone fact check that for me. Out of that, there was already rumblings as people were starting to read and write. It wasn't just being spoken in Latin. It wasn't just coming from a priest. And often it's credited to Henry VIII wanting to get a divorce, but it's much broader than that, much bigger than that. But you have the printing press and people it's more than just being told something. And then in that time, you see other denominations being formed out of that. And we now in a place where there's around 30,000. If you imagine Christianity as one bit, there's Protestantism, Catholicism, and there's only Catholic just means universal. It just means one. So there's still only one church within that. And then in Protestantism, because we still can't agree, there's 30,000 different denominations beyond that also. And there's still a lot of other people that have different views of how the church should work. And that's it, roughly in a nutshell. Does that make sense?
Yeah, roughly in a nutshell, that is a lot.
There's a lot. Sorry. You're going to have to edit that out.
No, I knew that Rob would be the right person to ask these questions to, because you have so much knowledge about stuff like this. And we both went to the same Bible college, and I feel like Rob actually listened to the lectures and I really didn't.
I also think it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. I think even within some of those denominations, there are denominations. So even just in the Anglican Church, there's high Anglican and low Anglican. Is that the right way to say it? Like there's loads of different things going on within that as well.
Yeah, I'd say, ironically, the Church of England as a whole, it's like Protestantism within that. So there's like a spectrum of how we worship and what that looks like and what people agree and disagree on. So that's within the Church of England itself. And in many different denominations, the expression of that can look different within that denomination, but looks very similar to another denomination because the expression is roughly the same. Yeah. And there are some unique differences. So, in the Baptist Church, it's a congregational led model, and there's voting and there's rights. In the Church of England or Vineyard, it's autocratic. There's a leader that's been posted in charge, and there's obviously safeguards and things put in place, but that person is in charge, and we believe God has put them in that place. and we will support them in their decision of leading the church in as Christ would lead in that direction. And sometimes it's really hard because we're using broken people to make those decisions. But actually, at times we have to choose support when it's difficult, but also trust in those people that have been put in those places.
Yeah, sometimes that makes life tricky when you work for a church as well, because in the Anglican church, there's like a massive kind of nationwide safeguarding body. There's bishops and archbishops and dioceses, which is like groups of churches in an area.
How many dioceses are there? Go on.
I've got absolutely no clue. 50.
Close. 42.
Oh, I thought that was going to be completely out. But then you have churches like mine, which is a free independent church, and like our pastor is the top of the chain, and he obviously gets advice from other people, and we are linked to a safeguarding body, but realistically we write our own policies and we make our own rules. And so that's really free, and like you can be as different as you want to be, but actually you don't have anywhere to go sometimes if you need to go to a higher power.
That, I guess, something, if you really want to talk about a little bit of Anglicanism, each church is independent, but every priest is employed by the Church of England, whereas I'm employed by my charity trust of the church.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I don't work for the Church of England. I think there's a misconception around that, in that it's charity. So, for example, a cathedral doesn't work for a diocese. So a cathedral is separate to a whole diocese, and that's a whole different thing. So each church has its own autonomy that can do that. And like, to preside in any church as a priest within the Church of England, you can't just magic one up. You can't just be like, I can go here and do that. You actually kind of have to seek permission and stuff like that.
Interesting.
So which gives protection to that place, because...
Yeah. Are there any other like big differences that you can think of where people might choose one church over another? So I have always been in free independent churches. You've been in different ones, but are there any reasons people might choose one?
Yeah, I think what predominantly for people, and this would be more for, I guess, mature Christians, the first church you go to is because someone invited you, right? So the first church I went to, I grew up in Gloucestershire in the middle of nowhere, and I went there because I chose to. It was down the end of the road. I went by myself. It was the one at the end of my road. There wasn't like any deep, meaningful reason. I was so blessed to meet some incredible people who I'm still friends with now. But, that's how that started. I didn't have a denominational preference. I had no idea what goes on. It was just the one at the end of my road. And then as I started learning more about theology and Jesus, you then think about why these things are important. But that kind of didn't matter until I was in my adult life. Whatever church you go to, Jesus' name should be proclaimed. You should be loved. You should be accepted. My heart and vision, not just for young people, but specifically young people, but for all. We only have one teenage response from Jesus, and he's left in the temple. Mary and Joseph leave him in the temple for 3 days, so that forget about it. And they come back and say, where have you been? And he's like, well, I've been in my Father's house. And that's his response. And my heart is that for all people, that's the case. So actually, any church, any place that I've been a part of, that's what I want to be leading to. But I hope all churches show that this is a place where you're welcome into your Father's house. And that should never stop anyone from coming to know Jesus. That should never stop me from you ever entering our church, as a whole, as a Christian. I'm so thankful wherever I've been that there are people in our church that I would theologically disagree with, but you'd have that as family, right? I get annoyed at my own family and I disagree with them. But actually, how I love and that, I know, right? Everyone think now, like at Christmas, and be like, "Oh, my life! I have to play Scrabble with this person ever again. I'm going to murder them." So yeah, I've been a part of traditionally what would be known as like evangelical charismatic churches that I've worked in. But like I said, anyone has been welcome to be a part of that, and we will never stop anyone from worshiping Jesus. And what I've learned about from young people, they're just way more honest about their thoughts than any adult. And actually, I come from a broken background and very different to what's traditional. So, and we should just be better at welcoming that and talking that through and saying, what do the words of Jesus say? And coming from there, and that my perspective. And for me, if you struggle with the words of the Old Testament and the words of Paul, you're like, oh man, he's a bit harsh. I applaud you to read the Sermon on the Mount, because these are the words of Christ. I can't read that without going, that's actually really heavy. If you can't read that and not be challenged, that's Jesus's words. And this is the person we say that we worship and get behind.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's something that I always tell people to do.
When it comes to being part of a denomination that maybe you don't fully agree with, or you don't love everything about it, or there's parts of it that really annoy you, what do you think we should kind of just put up with and be like, you know what, I just don't like this, but I'm going to stay in the church? And what is it where you think, no, actually, I should be looking for another church?
It's a great question. One of the best things I've ever heard about church splits was from a 14-year-old. And she went, "Oh, church splits, just middle-class people having a tantrum." I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And actually, that can we work out our differences and reconcile that first and foremost? And what is the heart of the crux of the issue? Often it's like people clashes rather than a theological clash. I read First Corinthians, like, again, read that. That is a church that has just started and they disagree on seemingly everything. And it's like, there isn't an easy way. It doesn't be like, oh, it's easy. It is difficult because it involves people. It's imperfect. But this is the method. The church is the method that Jesus has chosen that we're going to be to tell his story. And we have to be the best representation of who he is at all times. And the way we do that is through his word. And that if it gets to the stage, you're like, actually, what this person said is what we call heresy or something that's wrong with that, then that's probably the time. Or you're saying, is this leader, am I able to challenge them? Are they humble enough to hear what I say?
I think you make a good point. Is your problem with the church about the people, or is it about the theology and the teaching and the actual structure of the church? If you just don't like the pastor and you don't like the sound of his voice, that's very different to if he's not preaching proper theology.
Yeah. But I think what God wants ultimately is his church to flourish and thrive. I have loved the fact, we do a resound, like there's been over 70 plus different churches be involved. Man, I don't agree with everything they do, but we're proclaiming the gospel, and got to be honest, that's more important to me.
Okay, as a final question about denominations, types of church, what is it that you love the most about your type of church? And what would you encourage young people about if they are looking at going to a church like yours, which is an Anglican church, evangelical, charismatic is probably how you describe it. What do you love most about it, and what would you encourage young people about it?
My greatest joy is something that I said maybe why people come to church in the first place. We're really blessed because our church has a massive spire. It's quite obvious. Like in the town where we live, like you can see it from quite far away. It's quite obvious. For some people that are searching for something, they're just going to go to the one that they see. And I think with the Church of England, it has this such unique privilege of being the church. Now, it can have an attitude saying that we are the church, therefore that it should be like us. No, not at all. It has this unique privilege. And it should be really pushing in for, the fact that I can go into schools and be a chaplain at both of them. Yesterday I was doing work with our year sixes, and it's amazing. And like, we're so fortunate to be able to go in there and have an impact and tell people about the love of Jesus in a way that's accessible to them. The unique privilege we have as the Church of England is like, we will most likely be the one that people say, hey, look, there. But within that, it has its own like denomination and it looks different. So we hope that, well, I know it's got Jesus at the center of what we do. And we hope that people see that and that everyone is welcomed. We will never stop anyone from worshiping. We won't exclude people. So in the Church of England, the unique thing is that there are only two lawmakers in England, the House of Lords and the Church of England. Didn't know. We get to marry people. You journey with people in their stage of life. You get to support them in their death. What does it mean to step that life stage? So it is a unique privilege like no other that we have. It saddens me that, the census in 2021, the first time we're not predominantly Christian, but actually in a time that we're seeing more people interested in the gospel. What does it mean that we might be the first expression that somebody sees? Doesn't mean we're the right fit for somebody, but what it means is that I want to introduce people to Jesus, and it brings a unique privilege like no other. And one of the challenges is that we get probably more passiveness, but that's okay, because our job is to throw those seeds. When Jesus says about the parable of the sower, throw seeds out even on hard ground. And actually it's like, well, that's stupid and wasteful. Why would you do that? But he doesn't say not to do it. There's fertile soil and there's stuff that's where it should be going. But sometimes I'm so blessed that a unique thing that we have is we have a lot of hard ground. We have the privilege that we can just throw on. Doesn't mean it doesn't grow, but Jesus says we can go do it.
Yeah. Wow. That was amazing. Thank you.
You seem, Karen, you generally seem a little bit like, all right.
No, I feel like I've just listened to a sermon. It was great. Thank you so much.
Can you tell I'm applying to be a priest?
Yeah. Yeah, someone's trying to get in the Archbishop's good books, aren't you? Anyway, thank you so much for coming and sharing that. And especially for all of the researched information as well. I feel like that was a lot of stuff I didn't know. So I think a lot of people listening wouldn't know it either. So thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks, Izzie. Bye.
Brilliant. What an interview, eh? Thanks for that, Rob. Although I've got to say, He's made a bit of a faux pas, really, hasn't he? He said he's called himself the better Rob, but I've got the last say, so that's not going to go down well for him, really, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
So
it gets confusing for me because you're both Rob and I forget which one I'm texting.
Well, he can be Rob number 2 and I'll be Rob number 1, and I'm happy with that. And he can't have a comeback now. So anyway, thanks for the interview. Thanks for the interview, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, I think I learned a lot in terms of like denominations and stuff like that, especially having been in the same kind of church my whole life. I've never really explored different denominations. So it was really interesting to me to understand where it came from and all that kind of thing. But was there anything that particularly, hit you from that interview?
Yeah, I mean, I did like his dummy moment, but then going into the Archbishop's flat, that was pretty cool. Pretty cool. But yeah, you probably wanted a serious answer. I really think that I liked what he said and explained about everything. I just came away with this sense that all the churches really want to serve Jesus, want to serve the people coming to it, want to serve the community, and therefore it ultimately it doesn't really matter. If you have a preference, that's fine. You have a preference. I've worked for a Methodist church, 2 Anglican churches, and a Baptist church. And if I was to look for another youth leader position, I would look for any denomination. It wouldn't put me off or make me really want to go for one anyway. I just think that in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't matter. What about you, Izzie?
Yeah, I think I agree, particularly with his point near the end about, is the gospel being preached? Is Jesus being reflected well in that church? Is it a place where you can hear the word of God explained and serve other people and, evangelize to people? Like, if those things are happening, then you're right. I don't think that denomination matters. And actually, maybe if it really matters to us, we need to be searching our hearts for why it matters and whether it's actually important.
Yeah, I agree, Izzie. So, do you have a challenge for us this week?
Yeah, I think it won't be for everybody, but if you are someone who is about to go to uni or is maybe kind of growing up and looking at other churches, why don't you look into some of this stuff? Why don't you visit a few different types of churches or speak to people who go to different churches? Maybe you're staying in the same church, but you just want to look into this. And have a go, have a look around. Sometimes we don't know what there is until we have a look. But thank you, Rob from Poole, other Rob, for chatting with us about that stuff. It was really helpful to have some of that explained. Yeah. And actually, it's just really helpful in my life to work with people like Rob from different denominations and realize that we all do things differently, to appreciate what we can bring to the table that's different.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Rob.
Next week.
Before that, sorry. Izzie and I are busy getting our interviews done. We've done an interview for someone about when you go off to university, haven't we? She talks about picking churches, and that's really interesting to kind of go alongside this interview. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. But yes, next week we're answering the questions, can Christians have fun? And we've got another interview for you from my friend called Martin.
Yeah, it was a fun one. So stick around for next week and hear about what Martin has to say. Can Christians have fun?
Oh, let's hope so. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
All right. Bye.